Welcome to episode 13 of Writers and Fighters. I'm your host, AJ Ortega, and each and every week I'll be interviewing someone who is involved in writing or someone who is involved in fighting. This week I have a writer on, a songwriter, a musician, LC Flowers. He's from the borderland of El Paso and Juarez, which is where we met in school like 20 years ago, growing up in El Paso. He does some great work with electronic music, and so good, in fact, that I reached out to him for the intro and outro music for the podcast. So, when you hear my awesome music that starts and ends the podcast, that's LC Flowers. That's my boy Luis. I'd always wanted to have him on as a guest because he was so giving and so kind and open about letting me use his music on this project. And I know it may not be a big deal to some, but I know how it's weird to be creative and work at a piece of art and then eventually share it. So I just wanted to say to Luis and everybody listening that the music for the show has been one of my favorite gifts in many years. And I was thinking about gifts today. It's my little brother's birthday, and he passed away in a motorcycle accident in 2014. And growing up, we got to the point in adulthood where we had all the little things we wanted: cars, bikes, a nice TV, cool sneakers. And so every time his birthday rolled around, I felt like I was behind on thinking about what kind of gift to give him for his birthday. Like, I didn't take the time to be thoughtful, and I default to tools for his garage or like a gift card, something like that. Practical and useful for sure, but maybe not super thoughtful. And I've never been like good at giving gifts. Well, I've given some great gifts in my time, but like as an act or as a personality trait, maybe I'm not particularly good at it. I regret not giving my brother better birthday gifts because those were all like opportunities to tell him that I, loved him through an action. And so lately I've been missing him something mean, like desperate longing doesn't even begin to explain it. Just like a horrible, deficit of that, saying you miss someone doesn't even scratch the surface. And there were fights on over the weekend, boxing and UFC, but I didn't watch them. I wasn't in the mood, really. I was in my own fight. Me versus grief. And it's a fight where there's no rounds, there's no time limits, referee can't stop the fight, no 3 knockdown rule, no standing 8 count. It's a daily fight, really. And some days you're lucky and there's not a lot of action in the fight. Then birthdays or anniversaries roll around and you have several days in a row where it looks like Gotti versus Ward or Rocky versus Drago. And I know a lot of folks now that have lost their people too. And so I know they're fighting against grief as well. And to that, I just want to say that I'm in your corner. All right, let me bring it up a little bit by playing some music from LC Flowers. I didn't mean to go dark there, but sometimes that's a consequence of getting real. So no fight talk or anything like that today. Just a quick shout out to my little bro on his birthday and some music from LC Flowers. This is Polka Dot Woman by LC Flowers. Again, that one is called Polka Dot Woman by LC Flowers off of his double single that came out in January. You can check that one out on Spotify. Just look up LC Flowers and Polka Dot Woman on Spotify, and you can check out that double single, which features another song called Balloons. So, now that you're acquainted with his music outside of the intro and outro, here's the interview portion of the podcast, so enjoy. All right, I am sitting here with LC Flowers, my buddy Luis. How are you doing, man?
Good, man. How are you doing?
I'm all right, man. First of all, thanks for doing this, and big thanks for supplying me with this intro and outro music. You are the guy behind that jingle at the beginning and at the end, and I've gotten compliments about that. And so,
really,
yeah, I had a few people say, "Did you do that?" I was like, "Oh no, I didn't do that. A friend of mine did that for me." And one person said the intro makes them want to dance. Somebody said the outro was really good and that it feels like a wind down kind of credits rolling kind of end of the show thing. And
yeah.
And I remember you giving me a sample of your stuff and just being very gracious and being like, "Hey, pick whatever." You know.
Well, yeah. I think from the get, I knew that you were good at talking, and you were talking about a podcast. Not to break the fourth wall here, but maybe like a year or two ago, and
sure.
you were kind of on the fence, and I was like, "Hey, where's that podcast?" Like, because I was like, I wanted you to just do some music and obviously get it going. So I'm glad it's going good for you.
No, yeah, it was just one of those things that okay, I'm gonna do it. Had a lot of stuff kind of set up, but never was able to pull the trigger because I just didn't feel I was comfortable. Didn't have a thing, and then a year or two later, right, I come up with the kind of template for the show. Revisit those tracks you sent me, dig into my Dropbox from, again, years back, and I pulled them up, and I was like, "Hey, can I still use these?" And I insisted on paying you, and you said no. You said no.
No, man, we go way back. We go way back. I was actually thinking about starting the podcast with me just yelling 10, like 10, 10. And I know that's very inside baseball, and I won't go into it, but you and I go way back to, what was that, like 10th, 11th grade in El Paso and stuff. So
yeah, for sure. So tell us tell us a little bit about that then. So that's our the kind of thank you for the intro and outro music, and to recognize that people do recognize it as being cool and unique to my show. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
And so you mentioned El Paso, that's where you're from. And so I know in your like Spotify bio, I think it says El Paso and Juarez is home. Tell me a little bit about that.
So I came up in Juarez because that's where I was born. So I'm originally from Mexico, and then when I was 9, family up and decided we should move across for opportunity. This was like 93. It was very much a kind of like an education in music at the time, and music of past, because we were all kind of crammed into this little apartment, the 5 of us. But we had cable because like apartments by default they have cable. So
nice.
Yeah. So we had cable, so I was just absorbing all this culture, and it was really helpful, and also like just learning the language as well. But we had MTV, and that just kind of got me going, like just watching anything from like the Michael Jackson, Billie Jeans to Metallica, Enter Sandman, and then the big one at the time was the Nirvana Unplugged, like back in 93.
Oh sure, when we got the visual element to really cool performances that way, and the music videos and whatnot.
Yeah, for sure. So that was kind of the upbringing, and then in El Paso is just kind of like where I did school, and then beginnings of music, and then pretty much most of my family still lives there. Still have some family in Juarez as well, mostly cousins.
Right.
But been up here in Minnesota for almost 9 years, so that's been working out okay, especially on days like today when the weather finally starts to turn and it's not so evil.
There you go. Yeah, that's one of those things. It's even more extreme than my relocation from Texas to Utah, which comes with its shock in the winter and whatnot. But yours, I remember you'd be asking you at a certain point, be like, "Hey, how did you?" He's like, "It's one of those things that it's your body's going to take years to get used to it." And then you mentioned going back to Houston at one point and not being able to stomach the heat and just sweating buckets.
Yeah. So you get acclimated to this stuff, And then when I started running like back in like I don't know 2009 2010 or something, and I used to go out running outside in El Paso in like triple digit weather, and it was hot, but I could take it 3 4 miles and stuff. And now it's like the opposite. I go like in 10 below weather,
Oh
but
wow.
I don't know if I could do the yeah, I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah, the
The
heat anymore now.
110 degree weather. Yeah, for sure. So anyway,
Yeah, yeah. I know you're a songwriter, and from knowing you personally, I know you're a drummer. I think that's your thing. But when did the music thing start for you, and when did you start to? And so you talked about the appreciation of MTV and big music video events and things of this nature. But what about you picking up the instruments?
I think it was like late 90s. I think I was 12 or 13, and I started playing with this like really like I don't know if I could curse. I should have asked you
No,
ahead of
yeah,
time,
yeah,
but
yeah. We're explicit. You can say whatever you want.
all right, I'm gonna drop several f bombs now. No, so we're just kind of like a shitty band and like a trio, and I did that for a few years, and then eventually did some other stuff, just mostly drumming, and then into the like early mid 2000s, I started getting into like electronic music, and making electronic music, and that along with a class called Jazz to Rock in UTEP. So I didn't discover like the Beatles and they opened this whole world like back in like early 2000s. Just imagine being assigned to listen to Sergeant Pepper's by the Beatles and like
Right. I remember
you
that
know
class. I took that class too.
yeah
It was one of those
yeah
classes from this little bank of cool classes you could take for an elective, all that kind of stuff, a requirement of some kind. And so, yeah, I remember that class. And again, me being appreciating music and being kind of a band kid and all this stuff,
Mhm.
but opening up new genres and subgenres and historical context and stuff was super cool. Super cool.
For sure it was as advertised for sure because it's they talked about ragtime like Scott Joplin, jazz to rock, and then eventually you get to modern stuff. So anyway, back around that time, and I was playing drums in another band. I always like played drums for bands, and in around 2005, I started doing like the electronic thing, and then it wasn't until 2009 that I was like, hey, I should see if I could just like start singing and writing songs and stuff. And so since 2008, 2009
Okay.
is about how long the LC Flowers thing's been going. But before that, it's been a bunch of other stuff. So
Okay. And so when you say you start making music, you get into electronic music and start composing electronically, are you just using your computer like mouse and keyboard style, or do you have like a musical keyboard you plug in or some sort of machines and things like this?
so when I first started, it was just the laptop and software. So like two or three different types. You have Reason, Fruity Loops, and Audition. I think by Adobe. These are old things.
Sure.
So with those three, you could chop out beats and then just record. And so it was all instrumental. And I think the first one was 2005. It was called El Magnifico ASF because that was ASF, like Adeus Señor F, so ASF. So that was 2005, and I just like recorded like 10 or 12 songs. I forget how many. And I used to play shows all over the bars in El Paso, like at Zeppelin's and these places along downtown and stuff. So yeah,
Cool.
I haven't thought about those times in a while. So that's just good.
No,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
cool. You mentioned through your education at UTEP, you take jazz to rock, opens up a whole other world of music that you need to explore. You mentioned the Beatles. So who were or maybe are, I hate to say the word influences or inspirations, but who did you listen to kind of fuel that creative energy and invention and composing?
It's kind of evolved, but a lot of it stays the same. I'd say the most consistent styles are like 60s, what's called sunshine pop. I guess the Beatles have some elements of that, but it's this band called the Millennium that's just the most amazing band from 1960s. They have an album called Begin. Another consistent style would be the IDM like Aphex Twin and Square Pusher, like the really like drill and bass, like electronic,
Nice.
really wild stuff. And then I always revert to metal, man. I know like this is an audio podcast, but yeah, I got this today in the mail. I don't know if you can see that, but it's
Oh, Black Sabbath, dope.
yeah, it's the first Sabbath, and like I used to go to death metal shows like back in the day as well. So I'm all over the place, man. I enjoy hip hop a lot too, and yeah, I could talk about just influences for forever.
No,
So yeah.
those are some cool ones, and neat that you mentioned metal specifically. Pull out the Black Sabbath vinyl there, and that you were going to shows, death metal shows there in El Paso. Good metal scene, from what I understand.
Oh,
I wasn't
absolutely.
plugged into it, but all the musicians and stuff I know that are, there's a significant scene there, as it were.
I saw Deicide, Dying Fetus, all these cold bands. I guess they're not. I guess some of them are well known, but yeah, I saw a lot of like metal and really Club 101
Oh yeah,
and E9. I think it was before that. So anyway,
yeah.
not to go too far down memory lane, but
No, for sure.
but yeah, I just kind of grab from all over, and I just have phases where like I get obsessed with one artist,
Do a
and
deep
then like
dive,
okay,
yeah.
yeah, deep dive, and then you step back, and then you choose, you find this other one, and
No, that's really
yeah,
cool. I remember
yeah,
at one point when you were early in the making music phase of your life, electronic, probably 2010, 2012-ish there, you had told me at some point that you were listening to a new album a day or something like that, or a week, or something like that, that you're like, I make it a point to look at something new, a new artist or a new album. You remember
right,
telling me
right.
that? It's one of these
I,
memories I have of you, and we've never talked about it since.
no, I don't, but it doesn't surprise me
Mhm.
because I still every Friday I'll check the. Actually, I've kind of slacked it this year, but I kept up with it all of 2020. But every Friday, like I would just check a bunch of different websites that I go to and see what's like rating high and like what's not rating so high. Still listen to that, and because I don't always agree with what
Sure,
is
going
like
maybe against some
really.
reviews in some regard.
Exactly. So yeah, no, it's definitely still something I do. I still get vinyl to the house all the time of old new stuff. Yeah, I'm very much immersed in music. It's been a good constant in my life
No,
for
yeah,
sure.
I like that. You consume because we got, at a certain point, I kind of become like a dad in my music taste, where I got the stuff I listen to the same rotation, and if something new, it's like new to me is like in the last 5 years. But you're like stuff
Yeah,
that came out like this month from an independent artist. I'm looking for
yeah,
this, and so I always
yeah.
admired that and thought that was smart. It's the kind of stuff I would similar advice I'd give to new writers. I'd be like,
Right.
oh well, look at yeah, you're gonna read the classics, but also like read what was published yesterday, right?
Yeah, for
So
sure.
speaking of writing stuff, so tell me your process to write a song. As a writers and fighters, I brought you on as a songwriter. Tell me your process to compose a piece, or do you have a set way?
There's not really a set way. There's probably two different ways for the most part. I guess the most simple one is I'm just driving down the road and like a melody will pop in my head, and then I'm just like, oh shit, I gotta record that real quick, even if it's like a 7 second thing.
Sure.
And then I'll come back to the studio, and then I'll build around that if it's a good enough like vocal melody and stuff. And then the flip side of that is just doing it's called I call jamming, which is long form recording. You might record for 20-30 minutes, and then I do it's called trim the fat.
Okay.
This is all instrumental stuff, and you maybe condense it and identify what could become a song, and then get a 3 minute chunk, and then from that you start growing the other instruments, the vocals, the other stuff. So those are the basic two. There's other things I do, but those are the basic two methods for sure.
No, that's really interesting to me that you record all the jamming, like you said, rather than doodling around on a guitar or keyboard. Oh, that sounds good. Then hit record. No, like you record the jam, then
No,
you pull the sections out.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
cool. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I guess that
I
lends
have
itself to the electronic method too.
exactly. I have this obscene amount of just waves in my cloud of stuff that just like I never got to, or but I try to get to things as soon as possible, not let them get too old because otherwise the cloud space starts to fatten up.
No, yeah, for sure. I
Yeah,
understand that. I have a backlog of again notes. Many of mine electronic on the phone, just little text nuggets or something.
exactly.
They're just a pile of they're piling up, man. So I got to grab something and do something with it and
Yeah,
finish something, see
yeah,
something to
for
completion,
sure.
you know. I've been asking people lately, especially creative people, how has COVID affected your creative stuff, your music specifically?
Well, it's a good time to ask that question because we're rounding up the year, right? When everything kind of started
For
to go
sure.
haywire. Ironically, I was listening to this news story about how it was up like on the 11th of March. Obviously, the Oklahoma Thunder were playing the Jazz in Utah, and there was that announcement where like it was full, and then right at the beginning of the game, it's like, yeah, we're not going to do this today. So
Exactly. I remember
anyway,
that day. It was yesterday or
yeah,
something like
yeah,
that
yeah,
today or
yeah.
something. Yeah.
So anyway, I had to mention that to you because it's your neck of the woods. But around a year ago, when everything was going crazy, I went on Craigslist and I just bought this full size piano. I think it's 88 keys, digital piano, and I was like, I'm gonna learn some piano. And so from that, it kind of, to tie it back to your last question, it catalyzed this whole songwriting and music theory thing. So yeah, I started just watching this YouTube thing, and still at least once a week I'll just sit down and just do my scales and practice my chords, blah 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 blah. Even if it's just 20 minutes, 30 minutes, blah blah blah. But that was a big help in COVID.
No, I think
You
that's
know,
cool. I mean, that's come up like in two or three podcasts and for fighters and on the writing side of using YouTube to learn stuff and to gain knowledge and information. And I think that's cool. I employ that in my class and in my own life. The only reason I know how to use any of this equipment and do a podcast is because I looked at YouTube
absolutely.
videos. And so you're over here teaching yourself scales through a YouTube tutorial
Yeah.
and getting your reps in.
Well, yeah, and it was funny because I started learning, all these different scales, and then I would like jump back and forth between them, and I was like, oh shit, that's a decent progression there. And then I would like start exploring that, and I was like, so now I had like this 7 second nugget. And I was like, bop bop bop, and you hear that throughout all this music I made. So like,
So the
during
practice
COVID,
goes into the music eventually.
right, 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 and so it got into all the writing of the music to learn all that stuff. I mean, I very much knew, on the surface, just chords and things and how to play stuff and get around and noodle. But the pandemic was a good opportunity to get kind of into the guts of music and what makes music, and go back and learn sheet music and all that other stuff. So I'm still very much a novice for sure, and I will be for probably many years. But now I understand some terminology, and I could probably jam very terribly with somebody who knows what they're doing.
Right, right. No, but that's
So
good that you have this
yeah,
ear, what you know and like, and but now you're getting this kind of more technical. Oh well, now I maybe know why I like this. I know what to call this, and so you
exactly.
get to throw that new layer of your
Right.
knowledge of exploring the music thing. I love that.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Song progressions and whatnot. So it was good for that. And then also to focus on the production side of things, which is not so much a part of songwriting, but it's more so towards the delivery of the final product, like the end user listens to. And so just kind of get into different techniques to make it as professional sounding as possible, given that I'm, essentially in a bedroom in a house that I turned into a studio, to the best of my ability. So anyway.
No, yeah, that's the kind of little technical kind of stuff I'm doing on this audio end too, and it gets a little bit more crisp every time I do this. So
Yeah, for
you know,
sure.
you know that
Yeah,
story.
you're always chipping away for sure.
Exactly. And you mentioned seeing something to completion to where, the end user is going to take this in. You just finished up a project, that at home project that's also getting put on vinyl. You're getting 100 copies, I believe, made.
Right, right.
Tell me a little bit about
Uh,
that and the genesis and kind of the pitch and everything.
so it's basically just first time I'm pressing vinyl. I've been doing music for a long time, and that fact that I feel that the production value and the songwriting got better, and I was like, this is worth kind of investing, kind of like kind of bank on yourself type of thing.
For sure.
So I looked into it and I was like, well, I'll just do a quick 100 run. If that's good, I'll not only break even, but I'll go beyond that. And if that goes well, then I'll look to pressing, stuff in the future that I've done in the past and remastering and all that stuff. So yeah, it's very much a project of songs, 12 songs that I put together during the pandemic, and I just couldn't think of a better title. I guess I'm not very much a creative writer. At home was the best thing I could come up with.
Oh my God, dude, titles are the worst, dude. Again, I'm sending stuff out and, poems and stories. Oh my God, titles are horrendous. Titles are a nightmare for me. Oh boy, I understand.
Yeah.
At home. I dig it though.
Yeah. It's like you put all this work into something and then it's just like, okay, now give it a name. It's like, can I just like name a puppy instead or something? Or, just something simpler. But no, it is pressing and there's a certain turnaround time. So I guess I've gotten some orders already. Any that would go through, people would not see the vinyl until the beginning of June. But the record company that signed to the Mint 400 Records out of New Jersey, they're going to put it out digitally April 26th. So in about 5 weeks or something like that. So it's going to be available digitally first. And then I have a bunch of stuff up there leading up to it. The first Friday of April, I'm putting out through the same company a single called Quicksand. That's pretty much all the update on what that project is and when it's coming out.
Great. So April for the digital, and then if you order it, you can get the physical vinyl in June.
Yeah, it's color vinyl too. So
I know it's gonna look cool.
Well, the kids like the color vinyl, so it's a color vinyl. I don't know.
No, I again, all that stuff. I mean, the point of getting it is to admire the artifact, right? Which is another layer of appreciating the music, I think, than just getting the digital download, which, is good too. But some people do like that artifact. So the fact that you have yours, you probably agonized over the decisions and all these kinds of things of how is it going to be presented and all that.
And it's very much a product of me just being such a listener of vinyl too. Like it's like, well, even if I sold one copy to my grandma or whatever, and 99 go unsold, I will still have pressed it or whatever. But
and have it out there.
Pretty excited about it, and I'm excited and very proud of it too. So,
and that's the thing is, we spend so much time in the isolation at home. Again, aside from the pandemic, that this is a solo project, right? It's just me and my equipment and me and my brain and my notes and all these kinds of things. And seeing it to completion and being proud of it and like, hey, and recognizing, I think a few people will listen to this. Same deal with this weird thing I decided to do with the podcast.
Exactly.
People listen pretty regularly. I don't have a huge thing yet, but it's like, wow, some people do want to listen. Like that is shown. Yeah. And so it's really neat. I'm proud, and I'm glad you're proud. You should be, man. It's cool.
Yeah, it's that whole I can't remember his name. I think it's the War of Art. And I can remember the Stetfield is the author, maybe. Anyway, there's one chapter called "Do the Work." It's like you just got to do the work, and then if nothing happens, then you keep doing the work, and then if nothing happens, you keep doing the work, and then so you do it for the love of the game at the end of the day, I think. So.
Yeah, my sister gave me a shirt that says "Do the work," just a black shirt and in white, just says "Do the work" on the front.
Yeah.
So I love that expression, and she knows me, thus the gesture. And so, and again, you've supported this podcast. I've always supported your music and been a fan and been like, wow, he's always doing his thing, always putting in the reps. And so, yeah, I think it's cool that you have something that you can hold tangible and say this thing is done. That's a good feeling, man. That's beautiful.
No, for sure, without a doubt. Yeah, thank you.
And so you write songs and music, and this is Writers and Fighters. And so I always ask the writers, have you ever trained in like martial arts or even have an interest in organized fights on TV or something like that?
Oh my goodness. So I've never trained or anything. I think the closest thing was I used to belong to a gym that had a heavy bag, and I used to beat the shit out of it for about 10 minutes.
That'll work.
Other than that, when I think of fighting, I think of Chavez, Julio Cesar Chavez,
of course.
Boxer, classic. It was very much a thing that was going to happen, that we were going to go watch the fight with my dad. my siblings and I, like a bunch of friends would pitch in for a pay-per-view, a bunch of my dad's friends, and then we would like just watch the fight. So I always think when I think of boxing, I think of Chavez first of all, and I think of the trajectory of him coming up and then eventually becoming the biggest, and then coming back down, coming back up, and all this other stuff. But
Yeah, we were able to see a
no,
lot of that in most Mexican households. Like you said, these were events. These were
yeah.
and he had such a high volume. It's every 3 or 4 months. You're like, this is like they're spread out like weddings and quinces, and you're like, okay, cool, you know.
Actually, they're probably scheduled not to be on the same day as quinces or
Yeah, you got
weddings.
to stagger them.
Yeah, yeah, it's like they're their own event. No, but I would watch those. I'll catch a UFC fight here and there. It's not my main. I guess I don't even that's one thing the pandemic that is like I don't even have a main sport anymore. Like I don't really watch sports anymore.
Yeah,
It's just because half the fun of sports is like you get to watch it with your buddies and have beers and talk smack or whatever. But
for sure.
so no, not too much. I did go to this amateur boxing match about 5 years ago. I had a colleague at one of my past jobs, and he was training, and he's like, "Oh yeah, they're having a tournament." So I ended up going to this fight in like Northeast Minneapolis, and it's in a gym and everything. And I don't, I'm not thinking much of it. It turns out to be like one of the coolest things I've ever gone to. Just amateur boxers, and then some of them were terrible,
For sure.
but the ones that were good,
It's awesome to
it was
watch.
really fun to watch because they were just like these. Obviously, they were still very young, but you could tell like, oh, they've got the instinct, like yeah,
Yeah, very
like
technical. Yeah.
exactly, yeah, like watching any like young athlete, I'd imagine it's just like, oh, they've got the gift. Now they just got to put in, the reps or whatever. But it was really, really cool to see. And I was like right up front too. And I was like, oh, you hear like the punches, and they had the headgear and everything, but it was just really cool tournament. So
Yeah, I went to one of those here. USA Boxing had an event, and again, they had 3 rings set up, and there's 3 fights going on at all times, and plenty of room. You can kind of get up kind of close and everything. And seeing really young kids to seasoned amateurs, and seeing that range, like, okay, here, this person's in their first fight or two, and they're, and you can see it in their kids. And then you see some 14-year-old that's lightning fast,
yeah,
and
yeah,
he's already built like a boxer, and you're like, whoa, like this is how you get a Chavez.
exactly, exactly. There was this guy, and he must have not have been older than like 18, and he had a George Foreman style of very slow, and he would, I know you're looking at my arms, but like he would take a stance and just kind of study the opponent, and then
Kind
the
of
opponent would
pawing,
like,
that
yeah,
kind of
yeah, yeah,
big open
yeah, yeah,
stance, kind of pawing. Yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
yeah. And it was just so weird to see that in someone so young, like very like slow, like in methodical, and then like when it was time to attack, like you going for the kill. But no, oh man, I love fighting. As far as myself getting into the fight, that'd be bad news because I probably don't know how to fight. But
oh, you got to protect your hands, man, if you're a drummer. So nope, I
yeah,
don't
my
recommend it.
hands.
Um, I did notice on your video version of a song called Tokens, you used footage in the public domain from Jack Dempsey versus Tommy Gibbons from like 1920 something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Tell me, and so just you're like, I'm going to put an old boxing match to this kind of groovy song I got here.
There was no reason for that, as far as like it being tied to the song in any way.
Sure.
Uh, but I have spent some nights just watching old slobber knocker fights from
Yeah, it's like
we're
round
going to
30 or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
And you're like, holy shit, man. Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So no, I very much look into like the public domain and old videos for song titles, and it's very much whatever I'm feeling at the time. I guess at the time I was like, this song Tokens is about boxing, I guess now. So no,
At
so there
least,
was no real reason, but I love just digging into a lot of old footage, and if you look at my YouTube channel, just look up. If you look up that song, you'll find all the other songs. All the other videos are just like stock footage. Some of them like use nature. Some of them use like
no, they're really
the
interesting, man.
one for Polka Dot Woman is this anti-drug video from the 60s. It's just, if you watch the original,
No,
like,
yeah,
oh my God.
it's
It's
great.
yeah, it's very much it's just like really cheeseball stuff.
I
But
think it's interesting. Again,
but
maybe
it's just
like
great.
unintentional, but it adds this interesting layer where there's this kind of dissonance with what you're hearing and what the image is. And I noticed that even on Instagram, because you did that, you post a clip of a song with some stock footage.
Right.
Stock footage. I was like, this is so interesting. This is like a weird home video of, and with a, it's interesting. And so it's this
Yeah,
interesting kind of collage almost.
yeah.
I dig
There's
it. I dig it.
the home video one. I think you might be talking about is the I can't remember the name of the song. But I think it's the black and white, guitar samba looking one or sounding one that's just really like slow, but it's got a family on it and like a beach outing in black and white. And so
Right.
like half the time the video has nothing to do with the lyrics or anything. It's just at the time I was looking for that visual.
Oh, you let the cat out of the
So
bag. I thought you were like being artsy, man.
no,
um,
no, not at all.
so we're talking about some of your YouTube stuff, and we're talking about Instagram clips and hearing the music and seeing the visuals. Where can we hear more, see more?
The Instagram is instagram.com/lcflowersmusic, and I'll post there on the weekends usually, and just updates on stuff coming up. And then if you just look on Spotify for LC Flowers, the last single was Polka Dot Woman, so that one should pull stuff up. SoundCloud LC Flowers, just look me up. If you want to buy a vinyl, add LC Flowers Music on Venmo, and LC Flowers Music at paypal.com I'm sorry, at gmail.com on PayPal. I got that backwards. So
Sweet, man. Yeah, I'll put all that info there in the show notes. LC Flowers on all social media. LC Flowers. It'll come up. You guys know your way around the internet. Hey, man, it was cool to catch up this way. And again, wishing you luck on continuing to put in the work and getting those results, man. I'm quite happy for you.
thank you so much, and I'm happy for you too.
Thanks, bud.
Take care.
All right, y'all. That is yet another interview with a writer, this time a songwriter and musician, LC Flowers. He has his new at-home LP digital release on April 26th. And then in June, the vinyl ships. If you want to get in contact with LC Flowers in terms of getting all that stuff, you can follow him on Instagram, LC Flowers Music. Also on Facebook, LC Flowers Music as well. There's going to be a link in the show notes, in the description, to his Spotify. Or you can go in there and type in LC Flowers, and it'll come right up. He also has a single coming out April 2nd. It's right around the corner. It's called Quicksand, Strangers, a single release. So again, follow him on social media. Listen to his music on Spotify. Make sure you give it a follow. If you want to keep up with the podcast, you know how to do that. WritersandFighters.com, Writers and Fighters all over social media. I want to thank y'all. Happy spring. Be good. Be safe. Take care of each other.